Dennis doesn't sit down to eat. You better have some candy.
All right, Joe has given me the high sign that says it's 6 o'clock, so I want to welcome everybody to joining us. Calls to order in accordance with South Carolina Code of Laws 1985, Section 30-4-80-E. The following have been notified of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting. The Herald, the Charlotte Observer, CN2, and WRHI. So welcome, everyone. If I could ask you please to join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. We'll now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You have all received a copy of the agenda. Were there any adjustments? If not, that will stand with unanimous consent. All right, then we'll jump into the fun stuff. We've got some special recognition tonight. I'll let you do that first.
Have a couple of noteworthy recognitions tonight, and I'm going to start with the certificate of recognition from the school board to Gold Hill Elementary School. Let me just read this so I won't mess it up for the public. Gold Hill Elementary School has been named a 2022 National Blue Ribbon School by the U.S. Department of Education. U.S. Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona recognized 297 schools as National Blue Ribbon Schools for 2022. That's in the country, 297 schools. The recognition is based on a school's overall academic performance or progress in closing the achievement gaps among student subgroups. This is significant. This is the second time Gold Hill Elementary School has received this honor and is one of 3 schools that have been selected in our history, the district's history. Previous honorees include Gold Hill Elementary in 2007, Nation Ford High in 2020, and Fort Mill High twice in 2018 and 2004. National Blue Ribbon Schools serve as models of effective school practices for state and district educators and other schools throughout the nation. So you can watch the Josh and who are you going to take with you, Josh, to Washington to receive the award? Okay, Adrian. Okay, that's great. They get to actually go to the event, but you can watch it online, and and they go by state, and it's a real it's an impressive moment for the school. So come on up and receive your recognition. Next, I'm going to recognize Dr. Mike Wakesness, who's going to recognize Springfield Elementary, who is also our spotlight school tonight. And you're going to talk about being a PLC. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we are excited to announce that we have another model PLC school in our district. This is another national honor. As you know, you've heard me talk about professional learning communities and how important they are to our strategic plan. Tonight, we get to celebrate Springfield Elementary School being named a national model PLC school. The Springfield Elementary was recognized as a model PLC school for its sustained success in raising student achievement. The school's successful implementation of the professional learning communities at work process was a major contributing factor in the achievement of its students. PLCs are schools and districts in which educators recognize the key to improve learning for students is ongoing job-embedded learning for the adults who serve those students. As you've heard me say, the 3 big ideas of a PLC are a focus on student learning, building a collaborative culture, and creating a results orientation. To qualify as a model PLC school, it's a pretty lengthy, in-depth process. They must demonstrate a commitment to the PLC concepts. They must implement those concepts for at least 3 years, and that's always a challenge with our growing district and adding new people all the time. They must present clear evidence of improved student learning, and they must provide data on a yearly basis that shows they continue to meet the criteria of the PLC at work process. So at this time, we'd like to congratulate Springfield Elementary School on earning the honor of being named a model PLC school.
Thank you. Just 2 examples of 20 of some of the great work that you guys are doing. We do have 2 sets of minutes for approval, starting with September 7th. Let me ask about that one first, if there were any adjustments or corrections.
There was a typo.
I say it was an extra S.
Yes.
But other
So
than
that will stand as approved with that one correction. And then also September 20th. Any adjustments in that one? All right, then those will stand as approved. I think I saw a card for public participation. Let me get that. All right. Josh Ramirez, if you want to come up to the podium. When you get up there, you can state your name and address, and then you'll have 5 minutes to address the board.
Josh Ramirez, I'm 1154 Hartman Court. This is my first time doing this, so please forgive me if I breach any type of protocol, but I'll follow what you said. I guess my question is, in light of what has occurred specifically in this town and neighboring towns over the last, since September, just wanted to see if we can get an update on what we're doing for school safety. I did have the opportunity to speak with, I don't know if he's here tonight, Tony was his name? Todd. Yes, and it's fantastic. But I just wanted to see if there's anything that's coming from the board that you can share with us. And also, with regard to the agenda, where can we find that prior to? I guess we couldn't find it on the website.
It is generally loaded on the Friday before. We had a hurricane sort of disrupted the schedule this past Friday. It was loaded out there on Monday. I can show you where it is on the district website at some other point in time, but you're actually in luck because we do have an extensive update on safety and security that's coming up here in just a couple of minutes.
Excellent. Okay, well, that's it. Do I stand or do I?
you're done, you're done.
Yep, because he's going to take your place up there in a minute.
Yeah, get comfortable.
All right, but before we get to that, we do have a couple other things, starting with a staff report for monthly financials. Ms. Lordo?
Good evening. Tonight, I'm presenting the monthly financial report for August. The key about this month is this is the first month under the new budget for the full payroll. So you probably saw the total expenditures a good bit higher than you did in July because teachers get paid on a pay cycle of August through July instead of July through June. Total revenues to date as of August 31st were $17,619,522, and total expenditures were $20,379,677. So you can see that we were using fund balance for about $2.7 million, as we would expect for this time period in the fiscal year. There was not a lot of unusual activity in August other than largest month I can ever remember for vehicle tax collections. Vehicle tax collections were $1,566,000. $1.5 million in vehicle tax collections.
They usually run $800,000 or $900,000.
Correct. $1.5 million. Obviously, a lot of traffic around, and then it just depends on the cycle of when our individual taxpayers have their tag renewals coming up.
But anyone new to
the area
does it at the time when they register, right?
Correct.
So that would
Correct.
explain some of the folks that moved over the summer.
Yes,
perhaps.
correct. So 1.5 million, a new high for us for vehicle tax collections.
It shows you how much cars have gone up.
Oh, that's
Absolutely,
Since
that
the first
too.
off
A
the
lot
rise.
of factors. Any questions about August before we move on to impact fees?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay,
Question here.
Yep,
So
yep.
this is regarding the state revenue line. So I noticed about 1,000,000, almost 1.9 over the previous year. Is that attributed attributable to the new funding formula?
Yes, partially. As I think I mentioned at the prior meeting, we're all going to get used to the new funding formula and how we compare between the months and between the years, because it is now an even 1/12 distribution until we anticipate they will update those numbers at the 45th day and the 135th day, but it's now a 1/12. So we received a higher amount in July, and then cumulative for August 31st, we've received a higher amount. Also, it's due to our higher budget due to growth. The budget increase divided by 12 is a little bit higher number for this new fiscal year. So those two things contribute to that being more.
Will you describe just for one more level about the 1/12? Is it, so the 45 days, is it in arrears? Or, so will there be a catch-up after the 45th day for whatever was happening on days 1 through 44?
Yes.
Or is it a go forward?
It is a catch-up, we're told. Once again, this is new. We're going to have to kind of work through this year to see how the state handles this. But normally, this is what they did with the prior formula under EFA. At the 45th day, all districts have reported in their enrollment, average daily membership counts, and the state revenue pot gets readjusted. So we are told that will happen again, and then the final adjustment will be made in the spring at the 135th day.
So going forward after the 45th day, the new
12th
will be bigger.
probably will not see that until November, possibly December, going forward.
Got it.
Correct.
Assuming that we went up. I mean,
Assuming that we went up proportionally to other districts in the state.
probably not a leap.
Yeah.
I got a couple, I think Wayne wanted to ask, I got a couple more questions. Go ahead, Wayne.
First, was that the intergovernmental revenue? Was that what you were talking about? Asking about? No, okay, I missed, okay. Well, I just noticed that was up, and I think it's
It
probably
is.
because of the funding
It is,
formula change.
it is the new funding formula change. If you look at the detail on the next page for the various revenue sources, the new state funding formula is divided into two pieces. One is the state aid to classrooms, which for the month of August was $5.9 million. The other piece comes in at the bottom under intergovernmental revenue, transfer from EIA, the $1,050,874. Those two amounts combined are the new 1/12 current allocation under the new funding formula, which in total for us was about $84 million. So it's coming in two pieces, and that's why comparing it to the same month last year, it's not comparable because of that.
Got it, okay, so state aid to classroom was going to be a question, but
Correct. So state aid to classrooms is now the new amount with several of the special revenue funds rolled into that number. So that number increased over the prior year with the new funding formula. And if you recall during the budget process, we also had to move positions that were paid out of some of those special revenue funds to the general fund. So there's more revenue, but there were expenses that came over that offset that additional revenue. It wasn't truly all new revenue.
understood. And last question, could you elaborate on that countywide taxes current?
Sure. So the countywide taxes, we have to report separate than local taxes, but it is collected locally. That is by law 30 mills for the 4 York County districts. It has been on the tax books probably for 40 years now. The York School District receives 1 mill off the top because they have the highest poverty rating, and then the 29 mills are divided among the 4 York County districts based on average daily membership. So right now, the amount that we receive in this allocation comes through the county is based on last year's average daily membership. It also gets updated in the current fiscal year in the spring at the 135th day. And with us now being the largest district in the county, we usually see a positive adjustment on taxes in that category. But this is currently allocated based on last year's average daily membership.
Thank you so much.
Do you think there's any opportunity for discussion about that 1 mil off the top for York, given that now the entire funding formula is already based on poverty weightings?
I think that there's certainly opportunity for discussion. Also, if we would have that opportunity, it would be, I believe, you all working with the other 3 school boards and to initiate that discussion with the legislative delegation members. I would also like to see it has never had an inflationary factor. And we've talked about that among the 4 school districts several times over the years. It has always been 30 and has not increased as costs have increased. So if in the future there would be some change to that, I think that all 4 York County districts would like to see some type of inflationary factor built into that millage.
And is that controlled in Columbia, or is that controlled?
Controlled locally. It's controlled by, it's controlled by our local legislative delegation members. They would have to propose an amendment in Columbia, but it's local law.
So it's not the county
Correct.
that controls it. It's
It's
local
state law.
for the county.
Correct.
All right,
Yes. I can pull the law and the actual wording and send that out to you
That would be great.
this week. Glad to.
I've got
Okay.
another question.
Sure.
Federal funds that come in, does that come in multiple pots like our state?
It does. What you see coming through here on the general fund is only for ROTC programs. The larger federal pots of money like IDEA, Title I, come in under a separate fund and are not in these numbers.
Okay.
Yes. This is just a small piece.
That seems to come up as a topic frequently, so.
It, and that is under the South Carolina Department of Ed reporting. It has to have it's all accounted for separately.
ins and outs.
Noteworthy for the
Yes.
board. For the board to remember, and you know this, the ones who've been on the board, our amount of federal funds are very low because of
Very low.
our low level of
Low
poverty.
relative, yeah.
Very
You hear a
low.
lot across the country about federal dollars in education. It's not an issue here in Fort Mill because we don't get much to begin with.
And one of the real concerns with federal money is that we have it primarily, it's allocated to teachers, to positions, to service positions for our students. And as the teacher salary scale and the fringe benefit cost increase, the federal money does not increase proportionately. So every year during the budget process, we have to review that and see if we have to move any of those current staff over to the general fund and add on to the general fund and cover it locally, even though we're not providing any additional services for our students because of that.
Isn't our number somewhere between 7 and 8 million? I'm remembering, but I could be very
For
wrong.
us,
Yeah,
we don't receive that much.
maybe it was 7 or 800,000
Yeah,
then.
I was gonna say,
I think, I was gonna say right around.
Yeah,
that.
it's
yeah,
less than
And it was low relative to everybody.
it's
else.
very low. I would say we're probably in the 2.5 million range, off the top of my head. Yeah.
All right.
I can assure you, we're the lowest in the state.
Right.
Yes. I know that for sure. Impact fees, total collected to date, we are now at $53,585,646. We've now gone over 2,000 single-family units with the add-on for September. We're at 2,007. And multifamily, we're at 1,427 units for a total of 3,434. September had a lot of apartments coming on. We had 45 multifamily units permitted in September. We had 28 homes. So our comparable data for 12 months rolling, we're now seeing our lower number in single family is now reduced down to 34. We're only 34% lower than we were same period a year ago. And for multifamily, we're still up. We're up 82%. So with our high number of apartments in September, that percentage went even higher. So we're 82% more in apartments now, 12 months versus 12 months prior.
Do we know where those apartments were?
Yeah, because I'm trying to,
Trying to think where I've seen anything.
they're at the corner of Gold Hill, Old Gold Hill and 21.
across the street from, what is that, Regency, I think? is
I
the
think
one of
so,
those,
yes.
Apartments that have been there for a while.
Yeah, I don't know. There's new stuff going in there, but I also wonder if any of this is the new Elizabeth. I don't recognize the
Last
names
month
of
it
the
was.
streets.
Last month, the homes were.
See, but Elizabeth's starting with
I was going to say, it is
multifamily.
hard to recognize
Or-
the streets are new, and even when I Google them, some of them, they're not showing up yet.
I specifically looked last month, and the bulk of it was Elizabeth. I didn't do that
Yeah.
yet today, so. Okay.
We'll check, we'll try to get more information on where some of those are and share that with you. So for September, with the large number of apartments that came on, we exceeded the average. The average in 2021 was 800,000 per month. So for September, our actual was 1,049,000. So we're now seeing that increase. So we exceeded the average for September in collections. Just a few other things. Our financial audit's underway. Our audit firm, Green Finney, they're completing field work. They've been working remotely some, here some, in the last 2 weeks. It's going well, and they should be wrapping up in another week or two with their work. Property tax notices, I've confirmed with the county. They've loaded all the property tax bills. I'm sure everybody's not happy to hear that. I'm kind of happy to hear that, to know we're on track for property tax collections. They anticipate they'll be mailed by the end of this week.
That's early.
Woohoo!
Boy.
Yes.
Better than a couple years ago.
I would say everybody can expect them in the next, 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
Definitely by the end of the month. So, like I say, I'm just glad to know they're loaded and ready to go. The other thing I was just going to give you and the public just a quick update. Continuing to work with York County on the logistics for the use of impact fees. County Council did pass a resolution on September 19th to send our amendment to our plan to the Planning Commission. This would add some future schools to our plan, which would allow us to use this money for construction costs. Planning Commission will consider our amendment at their monthly meeting next Monday evening, October the 10th. So we are moving forward on that. Okay. That concludes my report. Any other questions for me? Okay.
Thank
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lordo.
you.
All right, this feels out of order. It's under reports and information, but now we've got a school spotlight. So it feels like recognition, but it's school spotlight. So.
So yes, we have our second school spotlight, and we thought what a great way to show the work that Springfield Elementary is doing with their PLCs, since they just got recognized for. So Mr. Fantone and team, you guys could come up, and we're going to hear all about the PLC process at Springfield.
All right. Well, thank you, Board, Dr. Epps, Dr. Wakesness, for allowing us to share our journey of PLCs. It's been a few years, and I want to first of all thank Mr. Olinger because the process started with him. Back in the 2017-18 school year, he decided to want our school to grow and really be collaborative, work together. So he decided to send a group to the PLC at work conference, and that really sparked the staff, and we have been growing on it since. In 2019 and 20, when I became principal, my goal was to be committed to that journey and continuously learn more and keep developing the staff in that particular area. And as Dr. Wakesness said a few weeks ago, the PLCs are not just a meeting. They are a culture, it's a mindset, and we're really proud of our staff, and I'm not going to stand up in here and talk much longer because the people that really matter are behind me. And I do want to publicly say that Dr. Frattaroli was giving me a little bit of a hard time earlier about my Colts. This is Springfield Colts and not the Indianapolis Colts. So
He looks better in the Steelers.
So I will wear my Colts proud because I am proud of these people behind me. So in our presentation tonight, you'll hear highlights of what Springfield PLC is and what it is not. But most importantly, we hope you understand how this process connects to our motto of all kids are our kids.
So part of PLC culture is also thinking about a results orientation. We want to see that what we're doing is working. And part of becoming a model PLC is you have to, like Dr. Wakes has explained, you have to show what's going on with your kids and show data. So I wanted to show you our data and kind of walk through it a little bit. So this is our ELA data through SC Ready. So that's our kind of end of year grade assessment through 3 through 5. You'll see that 2017 is when our school really started to adopt these practices, and you'll see the immediate rise in the 2018 test scores, the continued rise, and then you'll see a dip, and I think you can probably guess what caused that. So that is our COVID dip. And we saw our students severely affected by those things and a lot of gaps. But then you'll see our data that came in last year. So after 1 year of really adopting these practices, we were able to not only in ELA bring our kids back to what they were pre-COVID, but actually exceed where they were pre-COVID on our reading assessments and our ELA assessments, which was fantastic. Our math data tells a similar story, slightly different. You'll see again the immediate rise. We actually started our journey in math as a PLC because all of these practices take time to build. This culture takes time to build. And you'll see comparative, our math scores were actually higher pre-COVID than our ELA because we started that journey kind of sooner and we were very high achieving in math. But then COVID hit us really, really hard, and we have found that math gaps have been more difficult to fill than ELA gaps because they are so foundational. So obviously you see an excellent recovery, but one of the things that you'll hear tonight are some of the things that we're doing to really examine, especially in math, to try and get that farther up because we want to get back to where we were and again succeed where we were before. So one of the things that I'm going to let these ladies, you're going to see a lot of collaboration and hear a lot about collaboration. So we're collaborating when we present to you. But these are not just things just about a PLC, but we kind of wanted to say about Springfield culture and the things that we are both growing in and focusing on, that these are the most important things that we wanted to tell you about us, not just about what a PLC is, because we know you've heard that part, but we want you to know about us. So these are the things we're going to tell you about.
Hi, my name's April Jones, and I'm the 4th and 5th grade teacher, resource teacher at Springfield Elementary School. Collaboration is key for success for any team, but especially PLC. One of our many ways we collaborate, we have a grade level PLC that meets twice a week. The team consists of an admin member, the grade levels, teachers, a resource or SPED teacher, lead teachers, and interventionist and our literacy coach. In our team meeting, we go over data and best practices. We can learn from each other because we all bring strengths. One of my strengths is I know different interventions and strategies for all students who may be struggling with the subject. Through PLC, our academic support services are able to learn the standards that is being focused on within our grade levels. I'm able to embed it within my direct instruction. Because I've embedded it, we have seen academic growth within academic intervention classrooms. PLCs prevents the isolation and being on our own island as teachers, that we're part of a bigger team. By being part of a PLC, I'm proud to be part of the bigger picture at Springfield Elementary School. We all have the same philosophy, that all our students can learn at a high expectation.
Good evening. I'm Jennifer McMillan. I'm a 4th grade teacher at Springfield, and I am incredibly proud to be able to talk to you about one of our core values and beliefs at Springfield, which is our belief that all students are capable at learning at high levels. So we are able to support this through strategic scheduling to ensure that all students are exposed to grade level content. So we are continuously reflective and modify our teaching to ensure that we are meeting the needs of all of our students in our classroom. We are committed to making adjustments in our teaching, not excuses. So as my coworker over here tells me, our students shouldn't have to adjust to our teaching. Our teaching should adjust to what our students need. So we not only have high expectations for our students, but we have high expectations for ourselves as practitioners. So we always plan instruction by beginning with the end in mind. We know where our students need to go, and we do this through unpacking our standards and evaluating best instructional practices. We create assessments as a team so that all students are held to the same expectation and that we are accountable for teaching to those standards. After giving those assessments, we are very transparent with our data. There is no hiding. So we are able to really reflect on which, as a team, how we were as far as our success of mastery goes, and then really be able to evaluate which teachers were really strong in that content versus which teachers need additional support in that content. So we have a great system within our building that our coaches provide personalized coaching cycles. So we can reach out to our specialists, and if we see we have a weakness, our coaches will help give us that strategic support so that we can be continual learners and reflective practitioners. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jessica Williams. I'm the lead teacher at Springfield, and I've been very lucky to have been there for a very long time. So I have been able to start this journey and kind of continue there as part of these PLCs. So one thing we're really focusing on this year is setting goals for ourselves for student achievement. So you'll see here, I'm sure you've seen a picture of this triangle before when we talk about MTSS, but we wanted to examine this triangle a little bit more this year because a lot of our focus has been on the tiers 2 and tier 3. Like, what are we doing when a kid does not understand, does not get it, and how are we putting those supports in place? And so during our PLT meetings, we're able to look at the data, see which students are still struggling, and then come up with a plan on how we're going to support them. But this year, we wanted to focus a little bit more on the tier 1 instruction as well, so that instruction that every student on the grade level is going to get. Because if you think back to our data, we're going up, but COVID really did create some large gaps for us. So we want to make sure that we're hitting the kids the very first time the best way that we can. So what we're doing now is we've decided to set goals as PLT teams to focus in math. What is a healthy percentile of, or is a healthy student or percentile of students actually hitting the goal that we want them to the first time that we give it? So during that summative assessment at the end of the unit, we're looking and seeing, did 80% of our kids actually get this? If not, what do we need to do to ensure that that's going to happen? And if they did, we celebrate and then go to what do we do with the ones that didn't? The same thing with ELA, we're looking at, are they demonstrating mastery of the focus skills for that unit at that period of time? So we're really trying to focus on improving our base instruction and making sure that every kid is getting access to the best instruction possible.
Where'd you click that? There we go. Hi, I'm Kelsey Clifford. I teach 3rd grade at Springfield, and I have been a part of this process actually since Mr. Ollinger started, so this is really cool to see just where we are going. So one of the things that we focus on is not just what we do at the end of a unit, but how we're assessing them along the way. So we, especially in math, and we are improving this process in ELA as well, is we start off with a pre-assessment to see where they are. And then along the way, we are giving formative assessments to make sure, just like Ms. Williams was talking about, that we're catching students during that tier 1 instruction who really do need that extra support. We are creating small groups. And part of our PLC process is that we are able to actually share kids with teachers on our grade level. So if I am struggling with a particular area, getting with a student, I can then share that with another colleague who's doing it really well. And so we have this really awesome culture that it's not just my students in my class, it's our students in our school. And so we are able to kind of use those small group instructions to do that. And then at the end of our unit, when we do give our summative assessment, we're not only looking at how the students did, but we're looking at how we taught it. And so a part of our PLTs that we are in is addressing did I need to teach a different strategy? Did you teach a different strategy than I needed to? And we evaluate that as a team. And then we even go a step further in creating some tier groups that helps amongst our school that we can be meeting with in our classrooms, but as well as with our instructional coaches. And so we're able to use lots of data. Data is what drives what we do. And it's, I know Ms. McMillan mentioned this, there's no hiding in there. And so we really have been able to create a culture that allows us to evaluate each other's practices. And there's no shame in that because we all have the end goal in mind. And so we're going to look at some data from here.
Hi, my name is Casey Siegel. I teach second grade at Springfield. So an example of some of the data that we look at, of course, we would hope that we would catch those students who are struggling through formative assessments and reteaching, but we use a spreadsheet that looks like this when we're analyzing our unit assessment data. So at the end of a unit, after we've taught all these skills, after we've worked on reteaching, we give them their test. And teachers will enter their data based on questions that we chose that were essential for students to get correct in order to demonstrate mastery. So you can see on this spreadsheet, it's not every single question on the test. It's the most important ones that we decided as a team they need to understand in order to be successful. So we choose those specific skills. Each teacher enters their students' data for whether or not they missed that skill. And through this spreadsheet, we are able to tally how many students in the grade level missed that skill as a whole. And again, we can reflect on our Tier 1 instruction. As a team, do we need to change how we taught it the first time? Was there something wrong with what we were doing? Do we need additional support from our coaches? We're also able to analyze the quality of our assessment items by looking at how many students within the grade level missed a question. It also allows us to look at which teachers were most successful and see who had a really great way to explain a skill or to teach it, which allows us to share students effectively. And then we can sort the students to see which students needed the most support. So there's a fun little feature on there where we can sort them. And then we do something that looks like this. So we look at those skills that we've been talking about that are essential, and we break them down into what are students actually missing. So this was an example from my grade level last year, and we were on an addition and subtraction unit. So some students struggled with just computation and fluency skills, while others were struggling with even identifying the operation that needed to be used to solve a word problem. So we break those skills down, and we look at the students that miss the most questions, and we're able to put them into groups based on what they really need to be retaught in order to be successful. And you can see teachers can share notes with our interventionist so that she knows where the students are, and she comes and provides reteaching at times. Other times we work as a team and say, Miss Rodriguez did a really great job. Her students were really successful with this skill. Let's send the struggling students to her classroom for a small group for a few days, rather than using our busy interventionist for every reteaching that we need. So this has really helped us to effectively fill in those COVID gaps, especially. We're noticing improvements slowly, especially this year with kind of filling in those gaps through looking at our data and looking at those essential standards.
Good evening. I'm Casey Zappala, Assistant Principal at Springfield Elementary. So as you can see, we're pleased of the PLC process that we currently have going on at Springfield. Thanks to these ladies behind me and gentlemen and staff at home. But we understand that, our process is not perfect yet. I don't know if perfection can be achieved. We're always have that goal of continuing to grow. Just being able to collect everything that we can. We want to make sure we're efficient, we're productive, we're effective with our time. We want to make sure we can do everything we can in a good amount of time to help our students. We do a lot of things. We reflect on our PLC practices through feedback and our observations. As you heard, everyone's pretty much involved in this process. No one's individualized, everyone's in there as a team. That just goes throughout. It's amazing what I've seen these 3 years that I've been there at Springfield. We
try to collect as much feedback as we can. We provide check-ins with the teams. Sometimes at the end of meetings, like we'll just get a temperature check, see how things are going on, or see if there's specific needs that a team needs in order to excel in a certain area. We also conduct surveys multiple times throughout the year. They're anonymous surveys, so we get that good, honest feedback, so we can reflect upon that. Once we get that feedback, we'll get together as a team and work collaboratively to see what possible things we could then put in place, to make things more effective. Outside of that, we also always look forward to professional development opportunities through certain conferences. Every year we try to send 8 to 12 teachers to PLC conferences, no matter where they're at, just to gather that information, especially with a growing staff, and trying to send new people all the time to gather that information to bring back and share with everybody here at our school. And just knowing about everything, like our main goal is to continue to grow for our students. I know we're proud of all the accomplishments for our staff and all the hard work that they put in for everything to further grow our students, and thank you for your time tonight.
Well, thank you. I'd like to commend you all for the work you've done, and I appreciate the data and the collaboration piece in particular. I do have a question. Do you see amongst your, well, first of all, I'm happy to see the direction, the trends of where you're going. Do you see problem areas, meaning do you see equal gains in the various subgroups that you have? Is it across the board kind of uniform, going in the same direction, or were some subgroups more impacted than others is really what I'm after?
That's a great question. And I didn't introduce myself. I'm Erin Mercers. I'm the other assistant principal at the school, and I have been there since Mr. Ollinger was there too. He was wonderful enough to give me a job. So we are seeing some subgroup gains as well. Our ESL population has actually showed a lot of steady growth there. So we felt really kind of confident in that subgroup. And the one that we've really felt not as confident is in our IEP population. And so as you heard from Ms. Jones, who is one of our special education teachers, that is one of the reasons why we have really focused in on that collaboration piece with everyone, not just grade levels collaborating, but special education teachers sitting in these meetings. And part of that focus is so that what's happening in the general education classroom also goes into the special education classroom. So we're not just filling gaps, but creating new ones because they're not accessing the grade level material. And that practice has been a main focus of last year. And we did see our IEP students grow. Specifically in ELA, we saw the most gains in ELA, kind of similar to our regular population. And math, again, was an area that we were like, ooh, this needs more work. So we have actually done a lot of reflection with our special education teachers to see what additional things we need to do to make sure that they are also growing. And some things that we do look with that population of students is not just looking at the gains of whether they have met proficiency, but are they growing in general? Because sometimes the gaps are very large to get them from where they are all the way to proficient, but we want to see consistent growth within them, even if that growth isn't all the way to proficient. So we are seeing growth, but of course that is a big thing that we've been reflective about in our practices to make sure that we're tying those things in.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
So I've heard Dr. Epps say probably a million times that our teachers are our secret sauce in this district. And I think this is a perfect example when you kind of see all the ingredients here, of what's going on and how you're meeting, really as a district goal, meeting children at their own challenge level and really making sure that they're learning and we're tailoring our teaching. I loved what you said about really tailoring your teaching to what you're doing. So great job, very impressive. The question I have is, with this being such a huge school initiative, is what role or how are you bringing parents into the fold to get involved in the professional learning community?
You want to do it? Yeah.
So one of the ways that we do that is through our School Improvement Council, sharing the data, being very transparent with them. telling them about the processes that we shared with you tonight. Eventually, we would like to get them on committees. We have this, the CI3T model that we're using and have parent involvement with that. So that is one of the ways that we hope to get them involved in the future. But the main way is through the School Improvement Council and just making them aware of everything that we're doing, sharing the challenges, sharing, what we learn at these PLC conferences, and really just, putting all that out there for them and not being, bashful with sharing that data.
Thank you.
I have a question and a comment. Question would be, when you talk about teachers in teams working together, figuring out who has a best practice for this particular skill, do you see reception from new teachers and those who've been doing it for a long time? Because I could see first-year teachers gobbling it up, but it looks like, some of you guys talked about how long you've been doing this, and it sounds like there's reception across the board for, new ways of doing things better. Yeah? Anyone?
Yeah, you do.
Anyone?
Today
Good.
was a great example. We were doing math, and I think Dr. Wake, he said he learned something new today too. Absolutely. We're very open to learning new ways, because sometimes, you get stuck in a rut being a teacher for a long time. This is the way that I've done it, and then somebody else shows you a new way, and you're like, I've never thought of this. I'm going to try it. And everybody's extremely open, and we learn from each other every single day that we're in that room together. So.
And data helps too, because
Yes.
if you're all looking at your data, there's no way to be like, oh yeah, I did something, but it didn't really work. So you have to. That's why transparent data is a part of being, and it is a part of a culture to not be competitive with data, but collaborative, and that's why it always has to come back to all kids are our kids. It's not about who's sitting in your room or sitting in my room, because who's sitting in your room matters to me too.
And then my comment I would just make, and it's kind of what Scott was saying, but some of these schools are very large, 600,000-800,000 kids. I continue to be amazed and appreciative that every single student is recognized for their individual skills, needs, strengths. At every school that we go into, we see slightly different methods but you've talked about community schools we believe that, and class sizes are our two, special things that we try to do at this district. And I think that shows, because every single kid has a whole group looking out for their particular needs. I think that's awesome.
And I'll quickly comment, Dr. Epps, I would say kudos. A couple weeks ago, we had Orchard Park, right? That's what we had. So it's fascinating and wonderful seeing the distinctiveness between the two schools and where there's the tradition of excellence. And so it's fascinating seeing, because they're different. We're all different people, and how you choose to present information is fascinating. So Orchard Park, and you all have done a wonderful job in sharing that story.
That's like Scott and Christy have said before, the secret sauce idea. They're so talented, all those folks there, and then the folks out in all of our schools. I was looking at the niche article today, and we've got like 6 elementaries in the top 11 in the state or something. But there's different ways of getting there, but they're all getting there. Right. So I think that just says it's all about them. It's all about the people.
Yep. So thank you guys.
Nice job.
And congratulations.
Great. Thank you.
All right, talk about celebrating some success. You gonna do more?
I do want to add on a couple things. And I was over there today for the 3rd grade math PLC, and I did learn a few things. I'm not going to share with you what I learned, because I feel like I probably should have known that. But I think what you saw up here was a lot of the science behind teaching. So teaching is an art and a science. There's a scientific process behind it. There's an art to it, and this is really the science behind it. And everything they said they were doing, I got to see that in person today. Was sharing the data. And Christy, I think you asked a question like, Do the new teachers love it? Do the veteran teachers love it? Does everybody love it? They're doing a great job with that. But to be honest, lots of times that's one of the stumbling blocks with PLCs is getting teachers to be open to sharing their successes and also their not successes. But if you have the attitude that all the kids are our kids, it really, really helps with that, because you shouldn't be just concerned with the kids in your class, but what about the other students in the same course if you're in high school, or the same grade level in elementary school. So that often is a challenge, but I think when teachers see the power of it, they start to buy into it, because really a PLC, a PLT, professional learning team, you're doing the work that teachers do, you're just doing it with your buddies. So rather than planning the work and analyzing the data and changing your strategies for interventions, rather than doing that by yourself, you're doing that with with your teammates. So it becomes a much more powerful tool, and I think people tend to see the value in that. All right, so can I go on to the next one?
You're up. Yep, you're
Yes.
up officially.
All right, and I'm actually going to have Matt come up, and he's going to lead the presentation. But you've heard from me the last couple meetings about some of our EOC scores, our SC Ready scores. Tonight, Matt's going to give you a summary of those, but then also talk about the recently released SAT and AP scores. So Matt, come on up.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity to share tonight. We do have some current assessment data. In a couple weeks, I'll be back to do the report card presentation. The state report card is coming out on October 13th. So all of that is embargoed right now, but we did have some recent releases. Dr. Wakesness shared with you some SE Ready and PASS data recently, and also some EOC data. But we do have some College Board data, SAT results, and AP exam assessment data that we have ready to go for you tonight. So really just a brief overview. We're trying to compare the state and national scores, especially with that College Board data, that we have some national scores we can compare to our scores, just to be really truly a celebration of the hard work and effort that really everyone has put in. You just saw some great things from one school, but everything is going well across the district, just continuing that tradition of excellence that we have here in Fort Mill. So let's go ahead and get started. What we have are, all of this data is really from the 21-22 school year. So there's going to be some EOC data that's going to be a little bit different looking next week, but some of this data is what you'll see on the state report card that will come out in just a couple weeks. But it is publicly released on the state website. So right here we have ELA data from SC Ready and SC Pass. That's our end of the year assessment for grades 3 through 8. We can see that we have students that are meeting or exceeding expectations above where we were in the pre-pandemic year of 2019. So 69.4% of our students met or exceeded expectations on SC Ready ELA. In 2019, we dipped with the COVID slide to 67.4%, but now we are back up to 72.2%. And I took some snips from our fantastic data warehouse called Schoolzilla, which we have put into the budget for this year, and hopefully, if the budget allows, we'll continue to use that as we've rolled that out to district leaders, school leaders, and teachers even. They've all really loved this data tool, so we're hoping that we can continue to use that going into the future. Just a little plug for Schoolzilla. So we do have the next slide here showing math data. We had a bit of a bigger slide, as you saw from Springfield Elementary as well. That was the trend nationwide, statewide. We saw math scores plummet a little bit more during that COVID time. It's just a little bit harder for students to learn math at home without manipulatives and things like that. So I think that was just kind of a result of where we were at that time. So we went from 2019 pre-pandemic, 72.8% meeting or exceeding expectations. Didn't have testing in 2020. Then 2021, we dipped all the way down to 64.6%, but now we're on the way back up at 66.6%. So kind of scratching and clawing our way back in math. We have some great initiatives to get those things back up. You just heard Springfield Elementary doing some great things there. But we're really trying across the district to get our math scores back up to where we know that they can be. Yes, doing some research.
Even
And that number is the highest in the state.
Yes, doing some research with all the districts in the state, we are definitely at the top of the state. We're waiting until the official results come out in the report card, but it looks like we are #1 in the state in a lot of these categories. And I'll tell you more in a couple weeks. Science, only grades 4 and 6 take the science pass exam, SE pass exam. We did have 75.5% meeting expectations. We dipped down to 71.5. Really, we're close to meeting those pre-pandemic, our pre-pandemic status with 74% meeting or exceeding expectations here. Really doing some great work with STEAM, and I know that our science scores will continue to increase as we go forward. And here's a breakdown by grade level, which really was interesting to do some research on because we really are, and this one I can say with some confidence that we are #1 in the state in every single grade level and well above the state average, except for Greenwood 52. They beat us in 4th grade math somehow. The percentage of students meeting or exceeding in 4th grade math, I think theirs was 67.2 and we were at 67.0%. So we were really close to having a perfect slate there. But you can see ELA scores at every grade level, math scores and science scores are well above the state average. Even in the state took a really big dip in 7th and 8th grade math on SE Ready, with only 30% of students meeting or exceeding expectations there in 8th grade. We dipped as well, but not as much. A tough time for students, with the pandemic, especially those middle school years, trying to maintain their math scores. But again, we're hoping to get those back up.
Is that typical?
Yeah, I think that's
Is that typical when you see that? Even, let's say, eliminate pandemic, what would the data look like? Would it show a decline from,
yes,
we got 3rd through 8th?
It is. It's a trend. Just going into the middle school years, math gets a little bit more difficult, and the level of effort put into testing sometimes at the middle school level, we can see some scores go down a little bit there. So
We've talked about it before. I also think you get into things that you don't just do at home.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You get
true.
into a different type of math that you don't just sit around and talk about over the dinner table, like you do with ELA and basic addition and things like that.
Very true. You'll see that trend statewide and in our district over the past few years.
Does that continue from at the next level in high school?
We do have some high school scores coming back. We only have EOC testing, so it's really just algebra. That's really we can document. We can look at grades and possibly some formative assessments, but we really just have EOCs to measure high school students by.
Thank you.
Well, and unless you're a math person, my kids do full well. Don't come ask me because I'm not helping you with that. I don't know. You better 1-800 phone a friend because, so I think that's probably indicative, You've been in school more recently than I, so your kids may have a stronger chance. But the reality is, how much of the math that you did in school and in college have you used since then?
I'm not going to share with you a personal story about me trying to do 5th grade math recently, so
Right? So
I resemble that comment.
here we have it.
With math, it's methodologies as well.
Yes.
I can get you the answer, but I may not get you the way that the teacher is wanting it
Yes,
to be
correct.
presented.
Yes, and I think it's true that parent involvement goes down as grade levels go up.
Definitely. Well, in certain subjects.
Yes, yes.
Math certainly in my house.
True. Okay, so moving along from grade 3 through 8 testing, we now have end of course data. And again, this is the one that is really, it's going to be different on the state report card because the EOC data that's reported on the state report card is from the graduating cohort from this past year. So that the numbers are going to look a little bit different. This is the scores from fall and spring testing of 2021-22, or these are those scores. So algebra, biology, English 2, and U.S. history were all, again, well above the state average. And all of these courses, the EOCs did improve over 2021, except for biology. Biology did slip a little bit, but we are looking like we're on the upward track for most of these EOCs. So in 2 weeks, when the scores look different, that's why. Just want to make that clear.
So the report cards are coming out in 2 weeks.
October 13th is the release date. And we're still getting data changing daily in the embargoed site. So we'll get that to you
We shall see.
at the next meeting. SAT data, this is all brand new. This just came out last week. So again, this is the data from the graduating seniors in 2022. You can see at the bottom there, our average composite score has increased after a little dip in 2020-21 at 1068. It's now up to 1095 for this year. And you can see our average reading, writing scores and average math scores are both well above the state and national average.
I think one of the factors that gets overlooked most often is the percentage of students tested. Us versus other districts, the
Correct.
state, et cetera.
Correct, and ACT data has not been released yet, and really, we really tend to not have as many ACT testers. SAT is kind of the go-to for our students.
But we offer it
We do.
to everybody, and it's just those who choose ACT versus SAT, right?
Correct.
I mean, roughly 100% take one or the other. It's just that most take SAT.
Correct. A form goes home in November, and then we test in the spring, whichever one the student chooses.
Wayne brings up an interesting point, though, and it's been this way for years. We've always consistently tested a high number of kids. As it was SAT forever, and then
Right,
then
they can
AP.
choose.
And then you look at, and South Carolina always, as a state, ranks so low on the SAT, but everybody in the state could take it. Some states that were higher only tested their college prep kids, only allowed certain students to take. So for all those years, when you compared the South Carolina scores to the college prep scores, it was comparable.
Yeah.
Comparable. It wasn't the dip that we got the reputation for as a state in whole. Now, Fort Mill's never had that problem, and I'm talking about the state of South Carolina.
Right.
In case people didn't connect the dots with the math, if we took our top 49% students and took the test, that differential in average composite score would be a lot larger. I would expect.
It would, yes.
Very true.
Yeah.
That's true. And it is offered for free, so it's a great opportunity for the students. The state offers it for every junior to take either the ACT or SAT. So it's just a good opportunity. So we have a lot of students that take advantage of it. And then finally, we have advanced placement or AP exams. And again, this data was just released recently. We have a lot of students taking the exams, so we're looking to expand that even further with the number of offerings that we have. We had 1,789 students that took an exam, or that's the number of exams. We had some students that took multiple exams, so that number's not as high there. But the percentage of students scoring 3 to 5, which is the proficiency rank for AP exams, was 86% in the district. And again, that's well above the state and national average.
Do you know if the number or percentage of students taking AP classes has remained the same, gone up or down now that we are starting to offer more dual credit?
That's a great question for
I know, that's right, of course. I know just from having a recent graduate, right, that my small sample size of friends, a lot took dual credit classes instead because it was just a different way to get that
the
college
same
credit.
benefit.
Right, so I didn't know if we were seeing a dip in the actual participation in AP classes.
We can look into that and see. I'm not sure offhand.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah,
Something
I
to
don't
think
know
about.
if we have an intentional strategy towards one way or another. Like I said, I've noticed in the 6 years that I've been sitting up here that we've added more and more dual credits over the years. I don't know that that means we've taken away any AP opportunities.
Okay.
I think something we have to think about is there's lots of opportunities for students, and AP might be right for some students, and dual credit might be right for some students, and it'll probably be a mix for some students too. So I don't know if the numbers are declining, the enrollment. We've added a few more courses, so maybe it hasn't declined overall, but that's definitely worth something to look at.
Well, and I would even say, to your question, I noticed, and you can probably even speak further, my kids were 5 school years difference, and the courses that my oldest took were much more dual credit. My youngest took much more AP, and still, when it was all said and done, at the end of the day, they walked into college with the same concessions. So I think it's, to your point, a difference in just whichever kid.
And I think it depends on where they're planning on going. Are they going to stay in state? Are they going out of state? Are they going to qualify for Palmetto Fellows? Are they trying to get into an Ivy League school or not? So I think just something for us to explore more options that will really fit the need of each individual student.
And I think that's key, though, that we're giving multiple options to multiple students. And if for my children specifically, they were not going into a medical field, so they didn't want to take the AP biology or the AP chemistry. They wanted the dual credit instead. Right. However, we offer courses for students who are looking for their certification in other things too. So I think this is outstanding for those who are taking these classes, but another takeaway would be, are we providing classes for every student no matter what they're doing after they graduate? And we are providing that, and we're hearing that they have those needs. Right. And then when we're looking at our college-bound students, we're also providing more AP courses and more dual credit courses for those.
Yeah, certainly.
And I believe the number of AP exams is up quite a bit from last year, from the 2021 report card. And the percentage of students scoring 3 to 5 was also up about 5 percentage points. So, I think we're doing pretty well there. And then the final slide, which you have on the last page in your packet there, the communications department did a nice job of putting this together for us, just showing our course load of AP exams, and it really is a testament to the preparedness that our students have going into the AP exams. The AP teachers are doing a fantastic job of getting our students prepared to take those exams. As you can see, we have some tremendously high numbers of students scoring 3 to 5 in just about all of our AP coursework there, and well above the state and national average.
Is dual credit even reported on the state report card, or is it just AP?
Dual enrollment.
So it depends. Some of the dual credit counts towards college readiness on the state report card, but it's only certain dual credit classes. So it really just depends.
And that's really all that I have. Do you have any questions?
Questions? Outstanding.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, our next item is the school district safety update. I believe Mr. Young is going to kick it off.
Yes, I am not Rich Todd, but after I tell you all of his credentials, I will wish I was as cool as Rich Todd. But Rich is here today, and I think it's important that we tell you a little bit about Rich's background, because he does this presentation once or twice a year, and I just think it's important that we tell you who Rich is and the background he's had in all types of different fields. And a lot of school districts have this position, but it's filled with former principals or assistant principals that don't have the same background that Rich has. So I think it's important that we tell you about that. He joined our district in 2018 as the coordinator of safety and emergency services, which he still serves in that position. And it was created to focus purposefully on safety and security throughout our district as we grew and got bigger. Though we had many qualified candidates for the position, Rich brought with him a diverse background in law enforcement, security management, and school security. So he had all three backgrounds there. He was a police officer for 9 years, serving as a patrol officer and a field training officer before being assigned to his first position as a school resource officer, and it was the first in his department. He then joined the U.S. Supreme Court Police Department in Washington, D.C., and yes, they do have their own police force, where he provided security for Supreme Court justices, the Supreme Court building itself, and major political events like the State of the Union address by the president. So for 15 years, Rich worked as a contractor with the U.S. Department of the State's Bureau of Diplomatic Security. He managed protective security contracts in Iraq and Afghanistan for a number of years before accepting the position of Iraq Program Manager for the International Programs Directorate and the High Threat Programs Directorate, a position he held for 11 years before moving to Fort Mill School District. He holds a master's degree in criminal justice and is a graduate of the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. And he was recently selected by his peers as the chair-elect for the South Carolina Association of School Administrators Security Specialist Roundtable, which meets regularly during the year to provide training for school security directors throughout the state. So you can see from his background all the different experiences he has and what an incredible resource he is for our school district. So I'm going to hand it off to Rich.
All right, thank you, Gray. That's a lot to live up to, so I appreciate that.
I think, don't you have military, I seem to recall.
I was in the Coast Guard Reserves for a short period of time, but no active duty military. I did start out, so I'm in my 29th year now of protection, serving in the field of protection. As Gray mentioned, I started out as a police officer at the age of 20, so I'm not quite that old, as it may sound. But it's been to me, an enjoyable 29 years. I started out again in the Hinesville Police Department at 20, got to live my childhood dream of being a police officer. Not a better job in the world, Tommy. I'm gonna tell you, I got up every day looking forward to going to work. When they asked me about being a school resource officer, I was 25. I'm like, absolutely not. Chief said, if you don't want to do it, we'll appoint you. So I said, Chief, I'd love to volunteer. But that was really the best decision I made. Because when I got into the school, I found my true passion. And I love law enforcement. I love the freedom of patrol, the variety of patrol. But I found out working in the school environment, it was just such a rewarding experience to actually work with our teenagers. I was in a high school, about 1,850 kids, and they really made that job enjoyable for me. The love for school safety really hit home on October 1st, 1997. It was my first year as an SRO. I'd been in school for about 6 weeks, and there was a school shooting in Pearl High School in Pearl, Mississippi. And that hit home for me because I used to go to Pearl High School. I went to Pearl High School as a freshman and started my sophomore year there before I moved to Georgia and then graduated from high school. So it really drove the point home that this can happen anywhere. And that took on a big significance for me. I stayed there for 9 years, went to the Supreme Court, as Gray mentioned. That was quite a change, and it really, for my career, kind of focused more from law enforcement to security and protection. You got to do some wonderful things with the Supreme Court. It is an impressive place to work for a short period of time. Then you get kind of used to it. And then I had the opportunity to go to the Department of State, where I was for 15 years. I'm going to tell you, nobody in the world does security better than the Bureau of Diplomatic Security. Very small agency. They protect diplomatic facilities and personnel, 256 posts across the world. And I had the privilege of being in some new units, the High Threat Protection Division, then turned to the High Threats Program Directorate, focused on Iraq and Afghanistan. So that really exposed me a lot to the different variety of security, not just physical security, but technical security, personnel security, so about background checks, screening, personal security, bodyguards. So kind of the whole gamut of security, and to watch it all come together at one place was really a tremendous learning experience for me. One of the best things I think I learned from diplomatic security was how to be reasoned and methodical with your security approach, and look at reasonable measures when you implement the measures. So that was one of the greatest lessons I took from diplomatic security. Tremendous organization. So thanks for the introduction, Gray. I'm going to go over real quick a couple of things, just some updates on some things we've been working on. As you may recall, in December, we received a COPS grant for $486,000. We've accomplished most of these major parts of that program. The public safety radio reception, we had all schools in the district tested. 9 schools were found deficient. 5 of the schools that are most critical, we have now installed the public safety signal boosters into those schools. The other 4 technically don't meet current fire code standards, but they do meet the standards for the year they were built, and they're really pretty close to meeting current standards. So at some point, we'll look to maybe get those schools covered as well. But right now, we're all in pretty good shape with all of our schools. Our radios finally came in. We ordered them in January. They just came in this week. They just dropped them off yesterday, so we got 95 additional radios to pass out to the schools and meet their communication needs. Very happy about that. And our last major project we're in the works with, the contract's been awarded to number all the access doors to facilitate emergency response. And I'll tell you, this is going to come in handy. A good example, last night I got a call about an alarm at a school, and I'm trying to explain to the police, where's such and such hall, and I'm trying to explain to them, and this is going to come in handy. We'd like to look at my map and say, it's door number 5, and they can go right to door number 5. So we're hoping by December that project will be completed as well. So that's all for the grant. Some other security upgrades we're working on is card reader installations. We've identified 31 additional doors we're going to install card readers on at 16 schools across the district, and that's to facilitate emergency entry and reentry as well as just regular entry. We do find, believe it or not, sometimes staff members will prop a door open because it's convenient for them to use that door, and this has taken away the need to do that. They only have a card reader. They can badge in. It's going to keep them having to prop a door open and get into the building. So, and we're also looking to standardize across the district. Schools with standard footprints will have the same card reader configuration. So everything's standard across the district as far as the card readers. Cameras, kind of the same thing. We're looking to standardize cameras coverage across the district. We're looking at, with each school, we're going to go to each school and meet with the officer, meet with the administration, and walk through and look at views to make sure we've kind of covered the most important views at every school. Instead of saying, one school, I want a camera here, I want one there, there, then the next year I want one there, there, and there. It's kind of a standardization across the board, a really detailed look at what the camera coverage currently is and where we need to be to meet the needs of the primary areas of coverage. And District Emergency Channel, we've had this in place for about 3 years now, a radio system. We are happy to announce that the 911 Center now has one of our base stations in their dispatch center, so they can now hear our emergency channel communications as well. So that's in 911 Center, Fort Mill Police Dispatch Center, and TKK Police Dispatch Center all have access to our emergency channel now.
Are they two-way?
They are two-way. They can listen to
Not
us
only
and they can
hear
speak
us,
to
but
us.
if they needed to tell us something, they could?
Yes, ma'am. And all of our administrators, SROs, and school security officers have that channel on the radio, so all of them can turn to the emergency channel and they can speak directly to the police dispatch centers. So we're ecstatic to have that capability now in place with 911. I want to talk a little bit about some professional development I've been to. I think training is a key part of any security program, and not just at my level, but with our administrators and our staff. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. But I want to hit on 3 kind of key trainings that I've had the opportunity to go to here recently. The first is the Physical Security Training Program, which is an 80-hour course at the Federal Law Enforcement Center in Brunswick, Georgia. So that was a nice kind of homecoming for me to go back down that way. And that course really focused on federal standards for physical security. So it looked at things like cameras, doors, door locks, fences, lighting, alarms, uniformed officers, and policies and protocols for managing physical security. It involved a week of instruction, then a week of hands-on activities. And it's kind of interesting going around the room. There were, I believe, 35 of us in there. And they had us go around and introduce ourselves. And you hear, I'm from the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. I'm from the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. I'm from the Architect of the Capitol. And then get to me, well, I'm in Fort Mill School District in Fort Mill, South Carolina. So it's kind of the oddball out. It was great working with those guys as a team to get their input, again, from the federal level and their experience working overseas. I did get a good compliment I'm kind of proud of where they pulled us in individually to review our reports, and they said my assessment was the most well-written. They attributed that to my law enforcement experience being concise in reports. So I'll take the compliment however they would give it to me. The other is a multi-hazard school safety pilot program that was offered at the Emergency Management Institute in Maryland. This is FEMA's version of FLETC, a 40-hour course split into 2 parts. So part of that was focused on emergency operation planning and how to write plans and response plans, things of that nature for schools, school-specific. And the other part of that was emergency planning or emergency training for school-based personnel. It was designed specifically for teachers and people below the administration level, so the first-line workers. So I was happy to be a part of in the pilot program. We gave a lot of recommendations. There were 17 of us from 12 different states, big variety of careers and backgrounds that were there to give feedback, and they're now making modifications to that program. They're going to roll out across the country probably the next couple of months. And then the last is crime prevention through environmental design, known as CEPTED. Took that at the Florida SRO conference down in Florida, and that really focuses on how we can construct and manipulate the environment to prevent crime and to promote safety and security. So a lot of the principles we already kind of have in place at the district. We do use CEPTED as part of our site assessments. I'll talk about that here in a minute as well, but this is a good opportunity again to go down with a group of professionals and actually walk through some facilities and do hands-on assessments with them. So I mentioned we do training for our administrators as well. They look forward to this every year. Are there any here? Yes, Adam will attest to that. So this year we gave them a break. We had them for just one day this year. All administrators attended, and you can see the topics that we covered here was a full day of speakers, but we hit a lot of good topics here. A lot of good information came out of this, and you could see the variety of agencies that showed up to support us. They all were happy to come and meet with our folks. All volunteered to come, from the Office of Emergency Management to Rock Hill Police, the Drug Enforcement Unit for the county, SLED came, the 911 Center, Piedmont EMS, Fort Mill Police, and then we did a session at the end. We kind of had an interactive discussion about school shootings where we had the administrators identify for themselves what are the lessons learned that they've seen in the shootings and how they have been applying those to their school and the safety of their school. So I think some really good training we put forth this year, and looking forward to next year what we can offer them. I think I shared this with you guys before, but in June, we were accepted to present at the Innovative Ideas Institute Conference, which is sponsored by SCASA, the I3 conference in Myrtle Beach. There's about 1,700 administrators throughout the state attend that. So we were approved to attend a session called Beyond Videos and PowerPoints, Interactive Emergency Response Training for School Personnel. We are trying to get away from doing what I'm doing to you now, which is making you watch PowerPoints while I talk, and we're looking more for training for our staff that's interactive, whether it's a discussion-based scenario. It's a scenario we put them in a situation and watch them react. We did a case study the other day, actually at Springfield Elementary. We looked at a Robb Elementary School shooting and kind of lessons learned from there, and have the staff kind of identify lessons learned. And then we did a brand new one at Sugar Creek the other day, which is a video, kind of a trivia game format. We had a lot of fun with that. So we're always looking for ways to make our training more effective and more enjoyable for our teachers, so they don't say, oh God, here he comes again, another PowerPoint. Maybe they'll be a little excited when we come. I am also proud of this, that after we presented the I3 conference, the Sam Blankenship, First Sergeant Sam Blankenship at Fort Mill PD presented with me. We got a call from SCASA to ask if we would come do an extended version of that as part of their seminar series, and that's actually next Tuesday. So we're going to take the hour format and make it 2.5 hours, and educators from all across the state can sign up and come and take part of the course. So we're looking forward to doing that next Tuesday in Columbia. I am very, very excited about this. I will tell you, one of the things I missed the most about an SRO is actually that one-on-one working with kids. So we are planning a student school safety summit in February, and we're looking to bring a group of high school students from each of the 3 high schools, bring them up here for a couple of hours, put them through some exercises, get their perspective on school safety, kind of what we're doing, their thoughts on that. Also turn the table on them a little bit and say, okay, how can you get involved in school safety? And we're going to try to work with them to come up with kind of a student involvement plan. How can you leave this summit and go back to your school and make a difference and get your fellow students involved? And as part of that as well, we asked them to do a project, kind of like a skit about school safety, and then have them sit down with their principals for about 20 minutes and just have a one-on-one conversation between the students and the principals. And I think both sides are going to really benefit from that level of interaction between the students and the principals directly. So we're really, really looking forward to the Student Safety Summit in February. We're also working on a parent safety awareness program, and we get questions periodically, what are you doing in the schools as far as safety and security? And I don't want to do a presentation like this where we just stand in front of everybody and read off slides, right? We offered this at Fort Mill High School a couple of years ago, and I think I reported it was lightly attended. And I'll tell you how lightly it was attended, 2. So 2 people showed up. So we're looking to roll out a little bit different format with this, where it'd be a smaller group, a limited number of folks can come. And we'll probably use the training center, training room down the next building. Where we're going to give an overview of school safety nationally and then locally. Also look at some of the things that we are doing in our district, talk about the parent role in school safety, and then have some discussion exercises with the parents, so we can have two-way discussion with them. I think everybody's going to benefit from this a lot more than us doing a big forum where 2 people show up. We're hoping to see a lot of interest in this where they come in and there's actually some discussion between parents and the district on safety and security issues. I want to talk a little bit about threat assessment, and just to be upfront, I cannot speak about any particular incident, will not speak about any particular incident that may still be subject to any type of legal proceedings. So this is kind of just a general look at threat assessment and kind of how we do threat assessment in the district. There are kind of 2 ways that you can respond to a threat. You can react, which is kind of a knee-jerk reaction. We have to do something. Let's do something so we can say we're doing something, and the other is to assess the situation and then respond. And that's where we kind of take a rational look. We look at data and take our time again to make a reasoned decision, not just a quick decision that we may later regret. So we have a couple of threat assessment protocols in place. One is behavior threat assessment management. This is pretty common throughout the state and actually throughout the country. It's based on the U.S. Secret Service model of investigating threats. This threat protocol is if you know who the individual is that's making the threat. And there's several screening tools that you look at to determine, is this a transitory or is it a substantive threat? Does it need to be investigated further? It looks at risk factors as well as protective factors. Again, this is if you know who the individual is that's making the threat. You kind of take a little bit deeper look at that individual and circumstances surrounding them. Our other protocol is when you don't know who the individual is that's making a threat. So with the BTAM, there's actually models out there that are kind of in place. With this one, we're kind of we're drawing from different sources to kind of come up with how we assess these threats. So some of the information we're pulling from is the U.S. Secret Service Behavior Threat Assessment and Management protocol that we just spoke about. Some of it comes from FBI and DHS models, and some of this comes from just looking back at the reports of school shootings and targeted acts of violence at schools. Unfortunately, we've had 20 years plus since Columbine to draw from, and looking at historical data, historical trends, and how we can apply that to threats that we're seeing where we don't know who the individual is. Then that allows us to assess some level of credibility of the threat, and again, just like the other, considers not just the risk factors, but what protective factors do we have in place to mitigate that threat or that potential threat. Our threat assessments are done in coordination with law enforcement, other stakeholders. Of course, the school administrators are a big part of that. School personnel are a big part of that. I do want to stress that if we say not credible or low credible, that doesn't mean that we're not taking any action whatsoever on this event. We could do something as far as increased presence of school personnel, increased vigilance of school personnel. We ask them to do that every day, but sometimes step it up a notch or two. It could actually mean bringing in additional security personnel just for additional presence and visibility of a uniformed security. So safety is our primary concern, but also the impact on the educational environment. And what I mean by that is we may say this threat is not credible or low credibility, but if everybody believes it's a threat, then that does affect the education environment. So then you may see us step up a little bit more in terms of security to give people that assurance that there is an extra level of security present. Does that make sense? Okay. We'll talk about severe weather too, because the threats in school is not just active shooters, not just somebody bringing a gun or threatening physical harm. We deal with this quite often actually here in Fort Mill with the severe weather. We had the threat of a hurricane tropical storm last week. We've had a number of close calls with tornado warnings in the area. That actually happens quite a bit in the spring. We work very close with the York County Office of Emergency Management. I'll tell you, anytime there's severe weather on the horizon, I call them in the morning and say, what are you guys seeing that maybe we're not seeing? They're extremely helpful. They will share any information they have with us. They actually host calls for the school districts, and they'll get all school districts in the county on the line and kind of go over what they see. If a tornado warning goes off, for example, on my weather radio, I pick up the phone and call those guys, and see if it's our area or not. We also have some National Weather Service resources. We get updates or slides from them every day that kind of predict severe weather. And then for like the tropical storm, they also have webinars. We dial into those webinars, and we're able to get information directly from them and ask them questions. So they're a tremendous resource as well. One of their meteorologists has actually come and met with the district about a year ago and kind of explained how they do their operations there, what their terminology means. So if we hear a certain term as a district, we understand what that means in terms of our planning for how we're going to respond to it. When we make decisions whether to close, we can close early, we cancel school completely, go virtual. Those considerations, a lot of things we take into consideration when making those decisions. The forecasted conditions, what are they calling for? And we know weather's not always accurate. It can change, often does change, but we can only base our decision on what the forecast is at the time. We'll look at the timing of the event. So if the weather is scheduled to be here at, let's say, 4 o'clock, and we say, well, good, we can all be home by 4 o'clock, we have to also consider it could come in at 2 o'clock, which then puts us right in the middle of dismissal, and now we have everybody in the middle of a storm. So we have to look at the timing of the event and consider safe transportation to and from school, not just our buses, but also our staff members. Or we're going to release our staff members at the end of the school day to send them out into hazardous conditions. We want to avoid that as well. And of course, our best course of action, we're looking for what is the best course of action, safely continue instruction. And whether that means we delay school, we dismiss early, or we go virtual, that's a decision that's made in consultation with our emergency management and National Weather Service partners.
Interject here.
Sure.
That bad weather, severe weather, is typically, I think people think, in general, school people, parents think that it's just me or 2 or 3 people sitting in a room. Not the case. We have emergency man called York County Emergency Management, NOA, National Weather folks, all 4 districts. Often is Chester and Lancaster involved. We have the governor's office. It's not just a group of. It's a group decision. Is what it is. Sometimes it's a good decision. If we had armchair quarterback, we know that it's going to be sunny tomorrow and not 45-mile-per-hour winds at 10 o'clock. But we go with the information we have. So in regards to that, I know it's an important one to parents and students and staff in regards to getting to work or not going to work or getting your kids to school. But I just want you to know, the public to know, we take it very seriously, and it's not just a haphazard decision.
I think there's also a balancing act that you have to do about how far in advance, right? Because obviously the closer you get, the clearer the picture comes, but the less response time to adjust for students and families, right? And so I don't know what that magic threshold is about, like night before, morning of. Like, I know when I was in school, you got up and you turned on the TV to see if you were going today or not.
On those nights when you really don't know what it's going to be doing at 4 in the morning and it's 10 o'clock at night and you need to make a call, we've waited till 4 in the morning. I can tell you, no matter if you wait or go early, you're going to get criticized. At least I do, but the schools do. But there's a lot more. I guess the point I want to make, there's a lot more to the decision than just me having or us having a gut feeling.
Good. And talking about communications, just real quick, some communications protocol. And you can kind of see our goals up top. We want to keep those impacted by an event. We want to keep them informed. Share as much information as we can as possible in a timely yet responsible manner. I want to stress as much factual information as possible. Sometimes fear is driven by what comes on social media. We can't control what happens in social media, but we're going to put out to you what we find to be factual, and we're going to put it out in as quickly as we can, but also in a responsible manner. So we're not going to release information if it's something that the police are actively investigating that could interfere with their investigation. We do kind of coordinate with them, but we get this out as quickly as we can without jeopardizing anything that they're doing or anybody's safety. And of course, our goal is minimize fear, anxiety, and uncertainty. We try to calm nerves when we send out messaging, and we understand we're competing with Snapchat and Twitter and Facebook and everybody else. But we can only put out what we know. We can't really address everything that comes up in those mediums. We don't control those mediums. As far as is a district-wide notification or school-based notification, so district-wide notification is normally made if the event impacts all schools. So that's something like a delayed start, closure, early dismissal. Events significantly impacting operations at multiple schools. Then the district office, Mr. Burke, would then take the lead on that notification. Or if it's a catastrophic event at a school, a tornado hits a school, there's an explosion at a school, something along those lines, then the district office would take the lead in doing the communications on that. Other than that, we tend to leave it to the school to make the notifications. First of all, they can send the message out that goes into detail about what the implications are. How does that affect the school operations? Are we going to change how we're going to dismiss kids, or how does it affect the athletic schedule, whatever the case may be? It's specific to that school, and it allows the administrators to tailor their message to their specific school operations. It also allows the parents and the students to hear the voice of school leadership. And that means a lot, I think, when you're hearing the principal come in. It's kind of some reassurance that this is a person you're used to seeing, a person you're used to hearing, and that's who's giving you this information. So for most incidents, the notification is going to come from the school. I've been in incidents before with schools where in the middle of the incident, the principal says, oh, I need to go send a message. And I'm like, let's take care of the incident first, and then we can send the message. So I do ask that the public be patient. We get information out as quick as we can, but we do still need to deal with any kind of situation that arises on campus before you rush to send something out to parents. But we'll get something out as quickly as we can. Annual reporting information, there's a document on the website. If you go to the department section and click on Student Services Administration, there's a school safety section. In the left-hand column, you click on that, there's a number of documents related to school safety. One of those is on reporting information and how you can report information. Number of ways, school personnel, law enforcement. We have a tip line, a district tip line that's anonymous. I will say at a recent incident, we had 49 tips come in through that tip line. So that was a good response to the community, and we appreciate their input and passing along the information they knew in a responsible way to us so we could follow up on it. I would say law enforcement probably had just as many, if not more, calls as well that they fielded. Crime Stoppers of York County, they actually will pay for tips, and I don't know, we didn't get anything from those. I don't know if many folks are aware of them, but they are out there. And the one thing we do ask is social media is not helpful to us. When you report things on social media, it tends to just create fear and a lot of uncertainty. So we would ask if you have information may be helpful to us about something going on in the school to please use one of the first four means so that information gets to us and we can look into it in a timely manner. Okay, site assessments. We did site assessments of all schools in 2019, then COVID hit, we kind of shut down. We're now this year going to get back into the process and put all schools back on a 3-year cycle doing site assessments. So this year we'll do 6 or 7 schools. It is a full site assessment. We look at physical security, also looking at kind of the school climate of each school and conducting select staff and student interviews. Obviously, we won't interview all of them, but we'll pull out select student and staffs and interview them as part of the site assessment process. Then we'll come up with recommendations for the school and also for the district level for safety and security improvements, and also recognize the good things they're doing, because all of our schools are doing some very positive things when it comes to safety and security. Some of the measures we recommend, this is kind of how we determine which measures we recommend. And I'm not going to read the whole list to you, but we don't just say, well, this school's doing such and such, so we need to do it just because this district is. We're Fort Mill. We're a district unto ourselves. We're not Rock Hill. We're not CMS. We're not Lancaster. So we have to look at what fits our school environment, what fits our community, what fits the needs here in our district. And that's the reason we do site assessments. And we try to bring in our public safety partners when we do these, law enforcement, fire, if we can get those folks involved, our maintenance department. So it's not just me walking through, it's a team that goes through and looks at these issues to say, okay, what do we need, what are our true needs, and what can we do to be most effective for safety and security. I want to talk real quick about a couple policies that we are taking a look at, some things under consideration. One, a weapon deterrence and detection. I just want to make sure that everybody kind of gets a picture of how these programs are kind of structured. So if you start on the left, this is kind of a continuum from maximum screening to minimum screening. And if you look on the left, the maximum screening, the building is basically sealed. So that means no point of entry is accessible. It's either alarmed, or it's locked, or it's got a guard stationed at it, so it's monitored, so nobody can come in or out that point of entry. Think of an airport. So if you go to the airport, I think most concourses are probably above ground anyway, but you're not just going to walk in any door on the side. If you push one of those doors, there's an alarm or something on it, you got to have a card to scan it open. So those concourses are pretty much sealed. For a school, I want you to think about Fort Mill High School. At least 180-something exterior doors. That's going to be a tough building to seal off. Everyone is screened upon entry, so that means, take again Fort Mill High School, every time they change buildings, you have to screen those individuals every time they come in and out of that building. And screen during all hours of school activity. So if we only screen when people show up in the morning from 8:40 to 9:30, guess what I'm going to do if I want to bring a weapon? I'm going to come in at 9:35, right? So if you look at maximum screening, there's a lot that goes in that. It's very resource intensive. It would take a ton of resources, a ton of equipment, a ton of people to man this at just one school, particularly Fort Mill High School. You multiply that times the number of high schools and even middle schools, that becomes a Herculean task when you look at what it required to do maximum screening. Then on the opposite end of the scale, you have minimum screening, which is pretty much no measures in place. And I think we fall somewhere in between with what we have right now. We have visual screening, so we've taught our safety APs visual screening. It's actually a technique that Georgia Emergency Management started teaching back in the 90s, and they learned it from the Israeli Defense Force. of how indicators that people are carrying weapons. Same thing with behavioral indicators that people are carrying weapons. So our safety APs have received some instruction in that. There's a video in our Safe Schools training catalog that deals with that as well. Supervision and surveillance, super important. Staff members being visible, being vigilant, and just on the lookout for anything suspicious. Encourage student and staff reporting, which we have that in place. Reporting mechanisms in place through our tip line. We talked about some other ways to report information. And then search whenever there's reasonable suspicion. So if we have reason to suspect a particular student has a weapon or contraband, then we have the authority to search that student. So that's kind of where we fall right now. We are taking a look at some other programs, some other options to see what's out there, see what some other schools are doing. And part of this is, again, don't want to just copy what another school is doing, because what Charleston's doing may not be what we need to do. They have a whole different population than we do, whole different challenges than what we do. So we want to look specifically at Fort Mill. What do we see in our neighborhood and our community? We looked at Power School, which tracks student discipline data for the past 5 years, and we've had no firearms recovered in Fort Mill schools for at least the past 5 years, and that's as far back as I could go into data. So we want to take a look at what is the picture of what's the actual threat, what's the risk here locally for us before we design kind of a defense to that or a countermeasure to that. Also, we looked at some research on the effectiveness of metal detectors in schools. A lot of this information comes from a study that looked at 15 years worth of research, and what they came away with is inconclusive findings. There's nothing to show that it's particularly effective. A lot of people want to compare schools to airports. Well, why don't we make the school as secure as the airport? I want my school more secure than the airport. So the airport fail rates, they have red teams that go in, and their goal is to try to get contraband into the airports. These reports are now classified, but you can still get the general numbers. About 80% of the airports fail when they come in. They're able to get weapons or explosives through the airport screeners. And I would ask you to keep in mind that on 9/11, every one of those hijackers went through a metal detector at the airport before they boarded the plane. So did, I believe, the shoe bomber, and so did the underwear bomber. So I don't know that I want to be as safe as airports. Their failure rate is, again, about 80%. Some airports is reported to be as high as 95%. And that's their own people coming in to test them and see what they can get through there. New York City schools, they looked at their screening. They have a pretty robust screening policy. About 57% of the weapons there are found without scanning devices, so they're found by students coming in, typically reporting somebody has a weapon. And I think most students, or many students, if they know that, they're concerned about their safety as well, they do report when they hear that. There's other districts in the area that have found weapons recently, and this is a way that at least one of those weapons was found, was a student coming in and reporting it, which is what we like to see. So this is an interesting stat that came out of the study. For every 23,000 students scanned, one dangerous item was found in New York City schools. And that may have been a firearm, may not have been a firearm, but it's whatever they considered classified as a dangerous item. So 1 out of every 23,000 students that they scanned coming through. There is again, 2 sides to it, and kind of the positive, I guess, if you don't look at the metal detectors research, there's a decrease in likelihood that students reported carrying a weapon while in school. So it went from 7.8 versus 13.8 if they had to go through a metal detector. So that's students reporting they carried a weapon. So that's some of the research that's out there that we're looking at as far as the effectiveness of weapon detection programs. Some other things we're looking at: book bags, clear bags. There's some districts that are going to clear bags. Is that something we want to do? One thing we do want to work on is really increasing the reporting awareness, the outreach to our students of how to report, what to report, the benefits of reporting. Again, that's part of the student summit. I was a high school kid a long time ago. So I'm looking forward to hearing from these high school kids now. They're coming in and kind of giving us ideas on how we can reach their peers, how they can reach out to their peers and improve safety and security. And that's part of the reporting awareness bullet. Staff training and deployment, again, we talked about some of the visual screening, but working with staff to recognize those signs of a student who may be carrying a weapon, or a student who may be some type of threat or some type of risk. And then deployment of staff is just making sure we have effective supervision throughout the school day on school property. And also taking a look at events open to the public. Obviously, a football game event open to the public, there's a little bit more risk opportunity than there is, I think, in a regular school day when you have it open to anybody, not just your students. Oh, that's it. Any questions?
I have, well, one's a question and one's just a comment. I don't think you mentioned, or if you did, I missed it, how many SROs we have. But, you know, I don't think you said we have one in every single school. So can you just for a second talk through what we have in terms of security personnel?
So we have an armed officer, at least one armed officer in every school. It's either a school resource officer who is a state certified officer, or it's a armed defender security officer, which most of those guys are retired law enforcement, 20-something years or more in law enforcement. For most of the defender officers in the high schools, we're one short right now, but we generally have one SRO and one uniformed security officer in the high schools.
As well as some dedicated personnel for.
And the high schools have a couple, we call them campus security associates. They're not uniformed, not armed, but they provide additional security, surveillance, or supervision across the campus.
That's on a normal day. And
that's every
I
day,
think
yes,
that's
ma'am.
important. If you had said it and I missed it, I apologize. I
Yes,
just think that's important to know. One quick question. On some form of metal detectors, regardless of the type, I think I understand that there are different levels of sensitivity.
Correct.
And that in order to be sensitive enough to detect certain things, that would also mean sensitive enough to detect
Too much.
about three-ring binders and flutes and other things. Is that accurate?
Correct. So one of the most popular systems now, it's a walk-through system, a passive system. You just walk through it. It's extremely expensive. It's $15,000 a year per unit to lease. So you're just renting it for the time. And in order for it not to pick up the metal binders and Chromebooks, it has to be set at sensitivity that will allow any handgun smaller than a Glock 19 to pass through, is what the salesman himself told me. And he said it's really designed for weapons of mass casualty, more for long guns and larger handguns. But if you turn the sensitivity down where it picks those small guns up, then you're going to be searching kids for everything they walk through the door with. Cell phones, keys, all that stuff's going to go off as well.
Can I do one more that I just thought of?
Sure.
I just thought of something we were talking about the other day. You mentioned somewhere in here the ability to search when there's probable cause. That's probably not the right term, but we do not currently have in our policies the ability to do random searches, but I know that's something we've at least toyed around with whether we should or shouldn't over time.
Correct. The administrators can conduct searches right now of individual students with reasonable suspicion, but we don't have a policy that allows random searches. And that's, just in my research, that's something we'd actually have to go to our attorney and get his feedback on, because that's a legal question. These kids still have a Fourth Amendment right. It'd be up to the attorney to say, do we even have the authority to conduct random searches, and how do we conduct those policies?
When you were first hired, Mr. Todd, I remember spending a lot of time with you because safety and security was so important to me, and that was about the time I came on board too. One of the things that you said was very important to you was your focus on building relationships, not only with the children and the parents and the teachers, but also with law enforcement agencies, like, for example, York County Sheriff's Office, TK Police, the town of Fort Mill. And we've benefited from that. One of the things that I'm not sure that others are aware of is that it was so important to you that you created and initiated and really hosted a public safety liaison group meetings. Could you talk a little bit about that and tell others what that is, roughly who comes, how often it is, but that it is yours and you initiated it and it was not here before you came?
Sure. So we started the public safety liaison group when I first started, and we meet quarterly. The last meeting, unfortunately, was canceled because of severe weather last week, so we have to punt that off for a couple of weeks. But we have representatives from local fire departments, all three local law enforcement agencies attend, York County Emergency Management, 911 Center, Piedmont EMS, and sometimes the coroner comes as well. The coroner's office sends somebody. So we get together once a quarter, and we kind of give them an update on what we're doing in terms of safety and security in the school, talk about some of the training we're doing. They help us put together training for our staff. They'll actually come out and help conduct training. You saw the participation in the administrator training during the summer. But Fort Mill Police in particular, TKK Police, are really good when we do training with our school staff of being present to assist us with that as well. They help us put together response protocols, such as our reunification protocol. They've participated in tabletop exercises with us, at least 2 that we've had with district level. Dr. Epps is there as well. So we cannot ask for better support than we have from our local public safety. And I like to say I work hard at it, but I don't. Those folks have a desire. I mean, their kids go to our schools too, and they would do anything that they can to assist us. The first thing we talked about with the grant, the public safety signal boosters, that was actually the first issue and the biggest issue they expressed the concern when we had our first meeting. That was our radios won't work inside their buildings, and we were so happy on December 23rd last year when I could call them and say, "You're getting your radios to work in our buildings now," because that was a big issue for them. But they support us without hesitation. And anything we need, we call them, and they're right there to help us out.
And we appreciate those relationships that you've built with them, because when there is an incident in the school or the threat of an incident, they trust you to do what you do best and communicate with us, and we also trust them because of those relationships. And we thank you so much for what you've done.
Oh, I appreciate it. And again, I can't say enough about our public safety partners. We couldn't ask. You see some counties where they're fighting and they don't get along, and that's not the case here at all. We can call them anytime, and they'll help us in any way that they possibly can. And we don't take that for granted. We definitely appreciate what they do.
So what's your runway when it comes to the Student School Safety Summit, February 2023? I'm guessing that there's a runway you have with information that comes out of this. What's your thoughts on this, your journey?
As far as getting to the summit, after the summit?
Yes.
Both?
Yes.
So we've formed a planning team. We met last week to kind of break the summit into sessions, kind of what our goals are. And each session, there's like 4 or 5 sessions. Each session, there's about a 10-minute presentation that our staff's going to do to the students. So almost kind of like leadership development. Like, here's a quick little 10-minute on how to be an advocate, or how change happens in an organization. You had a young man stand here a couple months ago. This is from Nation Fort High School. He's a senior this year, who proposed student IDs. So we actually kind of worked with him, and I said, you don't just get to stand up here and say this is what should happen and walk away. So he actually put the effort in for us to put together a presentation for our security working group. So that's our goal is with the students, is to kind of have them kind of identify what the issues are, then have them identify from their perspective what changes need to be made, what's the path forward, because they're a big part of this school safety puzzle, and we want to get them fully engaged with it. We're hoping as well that when they're going to be brainstorming ideas, what we can do, but also what they can do as students, and we're hoping that they're going to go back to the schools, and we're going to see kind of what I hope is the excitement of the summit kind of wear off on their peers, and then we start seeing some more activity as far as safety and security from the students inside the school.
And just want to get clarity on something you mentioned earlier. So I'm a 10 million miler for Delta Airlines, so I've walked through 1,400, 1,600 metal detectors. For a living throughout the week, I walk through state, local governments where some may have metal detectors and all those things. I'm still trying to understand. Somebody still believes that there is a validity to metal detectors. And obviously there's information that you shared this evening where that combats that. There's a disconnect for me when it comes to that.
So I think there's a difference between, you have to look at each environment. There's a difference between the school environment with a focus on education versus an airport where it's more of a business environment or travel environment. And I want you to think for a minute when you send your kids to school. Do you want them to start the school day out by staying in a long line? By the way, if I'm an active shooter, you're all going to be standing outside so I can get you there. That has happened. At one of the schools, Red Lake, Minnesota, I believe, where he kind of shot the guy that was manning the metal detector. So do you really want your kids to go through the airport experience every day going to school? And there's a lot of research out there that shows the negative impacts of metal detection on the learning environment, where people it's more like a prison. It actually affects kind of their behavior, affects their grades. So I don't know, do we want to see kids come in and take their shoes off and take their coat off and walk through a metal detector and it goes off and I got to go back through like we do the airport? Just the logistics of that would be difficult to accomplish. And again, I would point out at Fort Mill High School is a good example. There's 4 buildings, 5 buildings, they transit every day. You're looking to do this every single time they go in and out of a building. I don't think you could educate kids in that environment. Just time-wise, I don't think you'd educate it. It'd take you forever to get them in the building, and then every time they walked out the door, you've got to screen them again when they come back in. And I do think that that would absolutely change the culture of the Fort Mill schools. And I think we have a lot of positive things going on here. I just think that would really adversely affect it. I mean, it's an option we'll look at, we'll consider, but I think it's an unfair comparison, say, an airport or a courthouse versus a school. Because I could say, look at a prison. That's some of the most secure places in the world. We don't want our schools to be like prison. Also, some of the violent places in the world as well. Don't know. I hope I answered your question a little bit. But
Thank you, Mr. Todd.
Other questions?
I'll just say it's a shame we have to spend this much effort and time on this type of subject, but it is super important. It couldn't be more important. It was kind of the basis for learning. You got to be safe, got to feel safe. And I appreciate all that you and the staff do to do your best to ensure it.
yes, so I appreciate that. And I'll just say, too, that a lot of this, and we do this parent, kind of the parent meetings, and we stress the parents' role in this. That's kind of where it starts. And I will say, I got to give a lot of credit to the parents in our district because they do contribute a lot when it comes to their kids to our school safety. You know, we have some different, some incidents that pop up. For the most part, we get full support from the community, just like from our public safety folks, but from the parents as well. So we appreciate what the parents, how they contribute to school safety already.
And I think the other component of that is the mental health aspect of things. Fortunately, so far, things have been idle threats. And I feel like it has been a bit of a wake-up call of just the level of anxiety and stress and, in some of our students and families for that matter. I think we saw some of that in the last couple of weeks. And so maybe at some point we can get an update on, on something having to do with mental health aspects that are not physical safety, but, mental safety as well down the road.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I know it's kind of anticlimactic after that, but you've got a couple superintendent reports.
I do, and it is anticlimactic because that's not near as important a topic as what we just discussed. Looking at your calendar quickly, the school board meeting tonight, of course. This weekend, if you probably received some information about the screening of the George Fish School documentary at 2 p.m. on Sunday, and then a panel discussion and a book signing at 3:15. That's here at the district office. Then the next day on Monday is the big event where we have a 10 o'clock celebration program here. And for those who may not know, George Fish School was our segregated school for black children from 1925 to in 1968, I believe, before we became integrated. So, and if you want to learn a lot more about that, every district probably had a school that educated the black children, but they were proud of that one in Fort Mill, and you'll learn a lot about it if you attend any of those events.
Well, and then we continue to use it as an integrated school.
And that's all the good, yeah.
Okay.
We didn't, right, we sure did. From 68 to
Personal attendee.
88. There you go. You went there. Then the School Board Candidates Forum sponsored by the Fort Mill School District Teacher Forum on Tuesday night, the 11th, 6 o'clock at Nation Ford High School. Principals meeting the next day. Now, let's go to the 13th. There's been a change. You see Fort Mill, TKK, State of the Community, 8 to 9:30. And if you've been to that before, you had reports from the county, both municipalities, TKK, Fort Mill, and the school district. I just learned today that the format is going to change, and they've already done it differently in State of the Community in York and Rock Hill. They're going to remove the county and the school district from the breakfast, from the meeting, and they're going to have reports from both municipalities, is what I understand, and Parks and Recreation, and I guess for both municipalities. So it's going to be a different look to it. You're still welcome to go. We're not involved this year, and I'll learn more as we go. I think they want to do something separate for the school and the county, is what I was told. So they're trying to make a better use of their time, I suppose. I guess it's just going to be, it takes a little while to get used to it. We've done it this way for
Forever.
20 years. But, so I just learned that today, and so I'll keep you posted, but it's going to be a little different, but it's going to be, and I think they still plan on having it at the Glennon Center, I believe. Again, that's what I learned today. The 17th is a teacher work day, and the next school board meeting at 6 on the 18th. Then the school board visits for the month of October, we moved because of the George Fish program. And then at the end of the month, we'll try once again to have a 2-hour early release day for students and teachers, which we tried Friday, but didn't get there. Then, of course, you go into the school board. In November, we laid out the school board visits on the 7th, election day on the 8th, then then the school board meeting on the 15th, and then the Thanksgiving holiday Wednesday through Friday. Questions or other dates?
It's not another date, but one thing I would add, the candidate forum on the 11th will also be live streamed, recorded, available. I don't know exactly where one goes to find that information about the live stream. I'm guessing if it's not already, it will be on the district website soon. Okay, so for those who might be watching, it will be on the district's YouTube page is where it will be live streamed, just like right now, okay?
Okay. Any other days? All right. The enrollment update, we grew like we typically do, a gain of 46 students. That may be a little more robust than normal from September to October. 18,148 now. No, 18,194, excuse me. We went from 148 to 194. Getting ready to crest the 18,002. And then the school monthly teacher attendance winners for September, Fort Mill High School with 95.2, Fort Mill Middle 96.2, and the overall winner, River Trail Elementary, 97.1. So
Yay.
there you go. Questions?
No, sir.
Anything else?
I think that's it for tonight.
All right. Well, we are in need of an executive session to discuss legal and contractual issues, so I will entertain a motion for executive session.
Motion to go into executive session.
All right, we are in executive session. Thank you all for joining. Thank you for watching.